short one. Volume 1, POV after cheating. I'll just come out and say it. I was the one who seduced Paul. I had no intention of doing such a thing when I first came to this house, but to hear them moaning night after night, to clean a room that smelled of a man and a woman who were very satisfied, I had my needs, and they were building up. At first, I was able to deal with those needs on my own. Watching Paul practicing swordplay in the yard every morning, however, stoked the fire inside me that had never completely died. Watching him reminded me of our first time. We were still so young. Back when he was staying at the training hall where we practiced, Paul snuck into my room at night and forcibly had his way with me. I didn't dislike him, but I certainly didn't love him back. It wasn't exactly the most romantic encounter. I had cried at first. The next person who made advances towards me was that bald, fat minister. That certainly put into perspective how much better things with Paul had been. Also, when I heard that Paul was hiring a maid, I figured I could use what happened back then as leverage in my negotiations. Paul was much manlier fellow upon our reunion than he had been back then. Any trace of boyishness had disappeared, replaced with the look of a man who refined himself both physically and mentally. At the sight of him, one of the first thoughts to cross my mind was that the past 6 years had certainly been kind to him. At first, Paul didn't try to make any moves on me. Every so often, though, he'd treat me to a sneaky grope that just got me the more worked up. I was able to resist, but I was fully aware that I was walking a very thin line. All of that came crashing down when Zenith got pregnant. Knowing that Paul had an abundance of libido, I got in my head that this was my opportunity. I saw my chance and I invited Paul into my room. So this really was my own fault. Hold on. Oh wait, I wish I could go ahead. I thought of my own pregnancy as punishment. My punishment for giving in to my lust and for betraying Zenith. Ooh, fuck. Okay. But I was forgiven. Rudius forgave me. That clever child, he managed to correctly deduce what had happened, lead the conversation precisely where it needed to go, and even bring this to an elegant compromise. He was so level and calculating about it as if he had some similar experience to go on. It was unsettling. No, best to quit while I was still ahead. Rudius weirded me out. And so I made a point to avoid him as much as I could. The boy was smart. He probably realized I was avoiding him. Even so, he saved me. I couldn't imagine that felt good for him. But he chose me and my child over his own feelings. I would owe him for that for the rest of my life. He was someone who deserved my respect. Yes, he did deserve it. I owe him a debt for as long as I lived. So once the child in my belly was safely born, once they grow up, I would see it that they made their way into young Master Rudius' service. Okay, this is deep because this is actually, I want to go ahead and answer a question here. Victor says, some guy argued that with me that making advances does not mean they had sex. To me, the euphemism a formal person like Lilia would make. So here's a big yeah, we're talking about the different ways that they talk, right? So let me go and go into this, right? So first off, what Paul did to her, right? Because Paul's a flawed character, and Paul does have flaws, but doing this is completely fucked up, right? What he did to her at that training hall thing in order to get back at the others and all of that, that's really fucked up, man. Like that, and knowing that that the nobles in this world, if we're gonna take like a social cultural approach in this, are all like this and they're all horrible individuals that like could have been much worse, that still doesn't forgive Paul for what he did at all in any way, shape, or form, you know. But the fact that like she came in with the knowledge beforehand, right, that like, hey, I want to go ahead and use this for my negotiations, she has tried to find power in that as a way to go ahead and like live, right? So, well, I mean, here with this line, the next person who made advances towards me was a fat bone. So here's the thing: is it doesn't necessarily have to mean sex, right? But it can be sexual work or sexual anything in that regard. So making advancements could be groping, could be taking into account the way that they talk. Isn't it kind of iffy since it's translated? No, probably. But this is a direct translation, and this is a direct chapter from some of the mods from Six Face World. So my big aspect of this is like making advances Dude, it could have been anything on the situation like this because I feel as though um, individuals of a higher status, individuals that work with nobility, individuals that work in, they all have different keywords that they make in situations like this. Making advances could be flirting, it could also be sexual work, it could also be groping. It just depends on the way that they try and cover up the wordage that's being used. But I have a question for you guys. Who is in the wrong here? And after the whole situation, right? Paul Zenith, right? Or Paul Zenith, Paul Lilia, Lily does this. Lily comes to work with them, and Lily gets pregnant. In your opinion, who do you think is in the wrong? My thing is, there's a clear lack of communication that should have been happening between them, right? Where I know that if Lilia opened up about this, she more than likely would have been fired, which is probably one of the reasons why she didn't open up. Absolutely, Eidolon. Both, but there is an issue. But there is one big point being. Can I say both? Both. But there is one key reason why I'm leaning a little bit more towards Paul, right? And that's specifically the power dynamic. In a level playing field, yeah, in a level playing field, I would immediately say, hey, you know what? Both of them are like absolutely. Don't get me wrong; they're still in the wrong, but both of them share the equal amount of blame, right? But let's say that I was the boss and Eidolon was my maid, and I go around and I'm touching Eidolon every so often, you know, beforehand. Yeah, exactly. Eidolon's getting to it exactly, and like I'm over there like touching them and like doing like making weird advances, and then after a while because of propinquity and because of the power dynamic, if Eidolon isn't up to it, Eidolon can get fired, and where's Eidolon gonna go? It's a weird fucked up scenario that they sort of got in. You know, with that though, how would Paul react if Lilia did have another man? If another man was coming to see Lilia, would he be okay with it, or do you think that he would be like against it? No, you have to focus on your work. You're here for work. You can't be out there dating other people. You can't be in a situation where he's already like before the whole lust segment. He'd probably be violent towards him. I'm trying to put myself in the scenario, right? Because it's like clearly there was already the weirdness that was happening with Rudius. That she was weirded out by Rudius not necessarily being a kid, right? His actions were never that of a kid. So of course it would weird out. Who would Lilia go for? Joke, joke. I think he wouldn't manipulate the relationship but still make advances. Oh yeah, he would be making weird advances. Absolutely real grim. And that's what I'm saying. In a level playing field, I would absolutely say, hey, you know what? Both of them are in the wrong. Paul was in a relationship with someone else, and let's say that it was like modern day where like she's not his mate or whatever. Both of them would be in the wrong. Both of them are still in the wrong, but this time it's slightly more towards Paul as well for making advances in everything that he did beforehand. It's already a weird, fucked up power dynamic. Let's say here. Oh yeah, yeah, and the feelings of power dynamics can come with possessiveness, isolationist, and all of these things. Paul and boundaries are not mutually exclusive, Spiffy. So going through this, another aspect here is like we'll break this down because for me it's like the whole people making advances towards her. Yeah, if we're gonna be realistic, if we're gonna be absolutely realistic, we don't even have to look that far. We can look at our own like human history, 1600s, 1700s, 1500s, whatever, right? How did nobles make advances towards their maids or slaves or whatever? They would make them do some fucked up shit. Yeah, and people would just be like, "Oh yeah, he just tried some stuff," and it's like, no, he did a lot of fucked up things to you. But that's the way that they learn to cope with it, and that's the way that we use coping words to try and deal with some traumatic manners, right? Because I'm sorry, but if someone's like hitting on you or going after you or doing some sexual stuff to you, yeah, it can be quite a bit. It can be quite a bit. There can also be arguments made about her playing into it as to not get hurt or stop the pestering. Yeah, but then again, in a position of power, you know, Back in the 1400s, the feudal lord had the right to sleep with the, yeah, exactly. And that's the point I'm bringing up is like, and when talking with others, you would often hear, even nowadays, even in, you know, upper echelons of society, how many of you know what a pineapple is? An upside down pineapple is. This is not even upper echelons. This is just out there. Or a unicorn. Yeah, that's right. I'm bringing out random terms. Yeah. In case you guys don't know, an upside down pineapple is for singers. But a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people still struggle in understanding certain things like that. But the meaning behind it, though, that's exactly what I'm saying is, for example, making advances, yeah? Making advances, or the concept of like literally using words like in a different cultural sense and time sense has different meanings throughout the ages, you know? There's also the idea of bride napping, which still happens today. Is that why people get married at like weird times? Like, there's some people that like there were some cultures. I think it was last stream where you guys were talking about like marriages happening at night or something. Was it winter or I forgot who it was that brought it up. But yes, okay, coming through with it was Anne. Oh, it was Anne. Okay, I thought it was winter. I was like, oh, so why did it all come down when Zenith got pregnant? Knowing that Paul had an abundance of libido, I got it in my head that this was my opportunity. I saw those chances and I invited Paul into my room. So here's a big thing with this. Through Paul can say no. If you love cookies, right? And you love your partner's cookies, right? Every single time they make cookies, it's so wonderful. And you told them that like, hey, dude, I'm only gonna eat your cookies for the rest of your life, whatever. And this other person's like, I have a cookie, you want it? You can say no because Paul couldn't do the segs. That's why she took it as an opportunity. Yeah, I know, as an opportunity for an introduction to something that still gives you the agency of choice, right? You can still say no as an individual, which is why it's interesting when we get Zenith's perspective and what we've read of Zenith's perspective, how everything went down. It's a very beautiful moment in that. Can you really refuse a cookie? I do. I actually have a coworker who like constantly is like trying to like is here's a cookie and I'm like no thank you, I really appreciate it, I'm good. Not because I don't like cookies, it's just because like it's actually just like I don't want to eat too much. I'm not really hoping what she was hoping to get out of it. Yeah, because here's where it gets worse, right? What happens if Paul says no? We're really gonna take this route. What happens if Paul says no? If Paul says no and she brings it up with Zenith, she's out of the house. Realistically speaking, if Paul says no and he doesn't say anything to Zenith, the power dynamic grows stronger and worse. It's not the same as literal mind control. Yep, it is not mind control. Manipulation and mind control are two different factors, and I think that's what's absolutely important about that. But for me, this is sort of what really stands out right here. So this was really my own fault. I thought of my own pregnancy as punishment, my punishment for giving my lust and for betrayal. So would she make more advances if Paul refused her? So here's the thing: if Paul refused her and yet wouldn't have said anything to Zenith, realistically, if you want me to be straight up, what makes a relationship oftentimes even gel harder is the rupture and repair process. If let's say that we're hitting on one another, right? I'm groping you, you're groping me, that type of thing. But like, it's just whatever. It's just we just do it from time to time. And at one point, I'm like, hey, I'm in a relationship. Um, you know, I, like what like you try to grope me, and I'm like, nah, dude, not today. But I don't tell my partner. Guess what? I come back to you and I do it to you the next day, and you do it again, and just keeps growing. That cycle's gonna skyrocket to an insane proportion. Because if I'm not openly communicating with my partner sort of what's happening and why I had to put up my boundaries, regardless, shit would have gone bad if he didn't communicate it to Zenith. If he doesn't communicate it to Zenith, It would have been bad. My big thing is her, and this is a big aspect as to why she had her walls up to Aisha. Because was Aisha really her kid, or was she a thing to be used for Rudy later on? To a thing to be to serve Rudy later on. Her punishment, her sense of whatever. That Aisha and Lilia chapter was phenomenal and really expanded on this, right? And that's why I'm like, you want to talk about growth or growth opportunities or the way a person can really get fixated into their mindset and use guilt, self personal guilt as a way to take it out on their children. This is all we're looking for. I think it's hard to visualize a situation where Paul refuses her because Lilia seduced him knowing that he wouldn't. So the thing is, Nick and Neko, seduction doesn't eliminate your power of choice, right? So, for example, I can tell you, hey, you know what? I can glamorize soda for you all day, right? I can be like, wow, this beautiful soda. Do a whole stream about soda and how soda is powerful and all of these things. This doesn't stop your self agency from not taking it. It's up to you and your own personal boundaries and what you think your power dynamic is to be able to choose whether or not you take the soda, whether you want a soda, even. Mm-hmm. Because someone can play into your every desire. I can come in as a schoolgirl with thigh highs, with the golden ratio, and like, or knee highs, little skirt, whatnot, and try and seduce you. But ultimately, that choice is yours. Paul is highly susceptible to seduction. It's either that, I would think Paul is a sex addict, so it would be very difficult for him to make that choice. Of course, that doesn't excuse his actions. But the thing is, as someone that at the end of the day, it still doesn't take away his agency of choice. And this is even through like an addiction choice. That's one of the first things that you focus on, which is you have the choice to say no. You have the choice to say, hey, I don't want to go in there. You have the choice for a support system. You have the choice to be able to call on people in case it gets hard for you. You know. So at that point, you can just say, "Hey, he was thinking with this dick, and he's always been thinking with this dick. Not he was thinking with this other head, essentially, and he didn't really care about what the consequences would be, right? Or he didn't realize the extent that the consequence, or that the extent that his actions would have consequences. True, but if someone you can base your chances off their habits and tendencies. I think that shows Lydia's actions as exploitative, while Paul is still in the wrong as hell. Mm, mm. Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Paul, yeah, exactly. Both of them have faults. But my big thing is still the power dynamic flips it a little bit, where it's still the person in charge. That's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's the same thing as like you go to work and you wear something a little revealing and the boss does something. You know, no one is a saint here for sure. Absolutely. Not here. Not in this one. Not in this one. But no, my main thing is the way the whole Aisha and Lilia chapter later on. I think it gives this whole thing a little bit more meaning. It's unsettling. No, what an awesome, I guess, way of. So would you guys get these POV chapters often, or no? Is it like once every volume or once every something, or is this like in the actual thing? Because for me, this is awesome, dude. Reading this out loud gives you a little bit more. The choice to not to is very important. Yeah, that's how you build trust in all of these things in a relationship. One or two every volume, if I remember correctly. Depends on the volume. Usually there's two or three per book. Hey, that's pretty good. For me, is like this really gives you more of an insight into the character's head and how they viewed certain things. Because, for example, even her seeing him work out and whatnot, saw Senna's pregnancy as an opportunity to like, hey, you know what? I can shoot my shot here, get away with it. I have needs, and instead of thinking, hey, you know what? I'm gonna get my needs met another way. Hey, I'm gonna do what Paul did to me in a way, right? There's a few in each book. Ed, are you interested to read the Turning Point 2 in the novel? That would be interesting. There's quite a few in here, but for me, this is a phenomenal way to go and get started with this, and start off with just like random chapters that like we've read. Extra chapters usually not Rudy's perspective, but there are other chapters for a sec. These are fucking excellent, excellent shit, dude. Excellent opportunities here. Man, you're an absolute goat. We are going to go ahead and do chapter 5.5. Also, hi, YouTube, for whenever this goes up. We're doing special chapter 5.5, Sylphie's father. So, get on, get ready, as we're about to get heavy with this one, ladies and gentlemen. And let's go ahead and jump in on this one. So we're going to start off with Zictor's note. In case you guys don't know, go and show some love and support to Zictor. Zictor, drop your socials so people can go follow you, as you're the individual that's been helping us out throughout everything. Can't appreciate him enough. Like, legitimately, it's thanks to him that we have pretty much all the chapters curated and up and ready to go for whenever people vote on them. So Zictor's notes: the translator made a mistake calling Sylphie's father Laws. I checked the katakana for his name, and it is the same for the American political philosopher John Rawls. So I believe Rawls is the best translation for his name, since it's a more widely known name. I've never heard of anyone called Laws. Actually, kind of true. I've never actually met someone with the last name Laws, to be honest. All right, my daughter Sophia has been a pitiable child since she was born. She has green hair. As it is well known that only demons have green hair, my wife looked at me in terror after Sophia's birth. Neither my wife nor I have green hair. Flustered, my wife quickly assured me that she had been faithful. I knew that she loved me from the bottom of her heart, so I didn't question a thing. I felt a knot of guilt in my stomach. However, as I strongly suspected that Sophia's hair color was caused by something in my blood, I'm half elf. I'm not sure who my father was, and my mother never discussed her ancestry. Therefore, Sophia's hair must have been the result of something within my heritage. When I assured my wife that my bloodline was the problem and thanked her for giving birth to our child, she cried. Oh, dude. Ophelia. Hi. Guys, show some love to Ophelia. Oh my god. As we're going through, I have a comment to make about this, but I also want to go ahead and state out, guys, literally, if you guys appreciate any of the content that I do, go show some love to Ophelia. It is the vampire queen herself. I can't state it enough when I say good friends make a man, make you feel like you're growing and learning. And Ophelia, Raccoon, Caius, they're insane content creators. From the bottom of my heart, if you have the opportunity to check people out, and people like content creators and other people that are starting off and doing whatnot, check them out, because they're insane. Their creativity, everything that they do always blows me away, whether it's playing Splatoon or playing It Takes Two with Caius and going wild. Like, legit, show some love and support, and especially even with Raccoon. Like, it's absolutely wonderful. Grape juice water. Hey, same. I have some tequila, some special water. So with this, I do want to go ahead and ask, right? Which is, when it comes to hair color, because hair color is a big form of discrimination in this world, right? If you have green hair color, people are going to look at you in fear, as we know by, the superb. Ooh. My question for you guys is this. When it comes to, like, we've already seen that, at least in the nobility, maintaining monogamous relationship is kind of weird unless you're a part of the religion or like religious organization. So what was it like for the common folks? And that's sort of where my mind is racing through the sociological impacts of, like, say that he did not believe that she slept, or that, like, she didn't sleep with anybody else. If for whatever reason he's like, I'm gonna get rid of her, because back in the olden days, we're using olden days mentality, people would say, oh, she's a witch, she's anything, and get rid of their spouses or their partners. Were things like this happening? Common folks are monogamous. Only nobles might have multiple wives or have a bunch of mistresses. Okay. Oftentimes, lower rank classes have the strongest superstitions, which is true. It is true. But through this, I'm also like, the amount that it must take for him to come to this realization. Caius, what's up? I appreciate you, bruh. You're wonderful. Are you also drinking that special grapefruit juice? I hope you are, man. I hope you're enjoying it. You had an amazing stream playing that It Takes Two. At least from what I saw, from what I was in there. So going off of that, my big thing is, what does it mean for someone, especially in a noble class, to be okay with it, dude? To be okay with all of those scenarios, to be okay with even the concepts that's coming through, and even realizing that it must be his own fault. That's a lot of introspection, and that's sort of what I'm trying to get at. That's a lot of interpersonal, or like, introspection, and quite literally reaching the area where a person's able to go ahead and start making these changes for themselves. What am I talking about? Just in case, I always like to prove, if any person out there claims that they're a pet therapist, they're not showing these models, throw them out. Throw them out. I don't care who it is. If they're not talking about models and constantly bringing up models to talk about what they're what it's referencing, they have no job doing anything, dude. What I'm talking about is this: if you don't have the bottom needs met, you can't self-actualize. You can't start the introspective process, right? So when it comes to our commoners, in some way, shape, or form, right? They do have this met, or at least Sophie's father does have this met, right? He has his physiological needs: food, water, warmth, the rest, as far as we know. Safety, right? He has a clear, intimate relationship. Feelings of accomplishment. So what's left? He can self-actualize. When we look at Rudy and some of the other characters, we can literally start breaking stuff down to see where they're at and what types of struggles they might have going forward. That's why I bring shit like this up. My wife was the child of a slave of a beast tribe. Image is everything. It depends on the world as well, Ophelia, and the time period, right? Because if we're around the 1500s, 1600s, some individuals, right, would get away with money. Power can get rid of a lot of situations. So I think it depends on your rank and nobility, and also what you can go ahead and like do certain things. I felt like rest is one of the most it is. That's why self-care is one of the most, like, the biggest things I press on people. My wife was the child of a slave of a beast tribe, and she never met her grandparents. Neither of us had any idea who our father was. We mused about how it was that we, the children of unknown origin, had met, fallen in love, and had a child who would never know her lineage either. This brought us both to tears. Through misty eyes, we swore to the gods that we would love this child and raise her as best as we could together. Shortly after my daughter was born, I consulted with the village's elders. Despite Sophiette's green hair, she was not an evil child. I promised I would do anything I could for the village in the hope that they would accept us. The village elder nodded and assured me that all would be well. I had lived in the village since its founding, and until the resident knight Paul had arrived, I was the only person to reduce the number of monsters in the area. Zictor's note. This is somewhat inconsistent with chapter 16.5. My full analysis is over there, which is true, by the way. Thank you. This helped me establish a good relationship with the other villagers, who were generally good-natured, though we would have faced serious persecution in other lands. My ties to the villagers, as well as the expectations placed upon citizens of the prospering Assyria kingdom as a whole, gave me hope that we might lead normal lives. In other countries, we would have been persecuted. As long as we were in this village, I believed that my daughter would grow up healthy. In those early days, I was optimistic. Ooh. Ooh. Hold on. Ooh. Okay, if Rudy wasn't born in this world, what would happen to Sophie? This is going to sound weird, but I'm thinking ahead, right? I'm thinking through a scenario. If Rudy wasn't born in this world and didn't carry such a big influence, she would have been bullied. Don't ask. Bro, because my mind is going into a scenario like this, right? Which is, it's either going to get very, very dark very quickly. We know the answer. Oh, shit. It's going to get dark very, very quickly, or there's going to be more things that pop up in scenarios like this. My heart sinks when I'm thinking about scenarios like this, because I feel like, yes, Rudy might have overstepped the boundary when they were kids, but he fixed that, and he's started having feelings and all of those stuff. But if Rudy wasn't born, what would happen to both the social encounter rate of her, right, and her developmental rate at that as well? Easy spoiler territory. I will avoid it then. And this is how, this is where my mind's at. This is why I love talking about things like this, because my brain is instantly there. And it's also the persecution level of a scenario like this. Huge. Huge. Anyway, I first learned that adults' rules don't apply to the children. When my daughter was about 5 years old, the saint ranked magician Roxy had just visited our village, and she had been accepted by the other villagers. But then my daughter had become a target for the other children because of the fact that Roxy's blue hair marked her as a demon had circulated throughout the village. And if the story's adults shared with their children, demons were always the enemy. At first, the children targeted Roxy too, but as an experienced adventurer, she was able to deal with them with ease. However, when she left, the other children turned their attention to my green-haired Sylphia. Unable to fight back, she was a target of mud and was occasionally chased around by children wearing sticks. That's... This is what I'm scared of. Before this chapter even continues, and here I'm gonna go into a close up. Before we even continue with this chapter, this is what I'm scared of. I understand the parents wanting to separate Rudy and Sylphie because of their relationship dynamics and how close they were getting and whatnot. But this is my greatest fear. As an individual, as a psychologist looking in, if I was hearing this story from Paul or Sophie's father or whatnot about attachment, about them separating, and all, my greatest fear is this: a parataxic distortion has been formed. The greatest thing that you could have that we could do as parents when a parataxic distortion is formed, when we put someone up on a pedestal, is not rip people apart and send them away. Do you know why? That parataxic distortion might get stronger if a traumatic incident happens. Trauma bonding is a huge moment, is a huge reason why you have situations where like where all of a sudden it's like, yo, that person's toxic for you. Oh, but we've been through so much together. You bonded over a trauma. When it comes to Rudy, because I know Rudy's been working on himself, and this ain't no shade to Rudy, this is just a general example. When it comes to Rudy in a situation like this, let's say that they were to meet when they were older. Let's say Rudy is despondent. He's still taking in that trauma that he had from Eris, that sexual trauma. Let's say that he might be full of like just raw emotion and not know about, like, you know, his attachment styles might be a little messed up. He might be anxious, whatnot. And we have Sylphie here who still holds Rudy up to a pedestal. The Rudy that she meets, or that she would meet when they're older, is not the Rudy that she knows. What does that do to a person? I've seen this time and time again. And I've seen this a lot in anime. You guys ready? I can fix it. I can fix him. I can fix her. It's that mentality of I can get them back up there because they need to be like, you know, Roxy's panties. They need to stay up here in this area of a pedestal that's been created. And so it might be natural feelings, feelings of love, feelings of longing, feelings of we were together but we were separated, feelings of hurt and trauma, and all of these things that end up them coming back together like magnets. If a pet, only my, if a pedestal is like a parataxic distortion is not properly dealt with in future orientations, if they're to meet, it's like magnets colliding back in again. Will it help? Probably, if that were the case, right? But I'm just throwing this out there because that's a fear that is really like psychologically driven. It's 100% accurate if that were to happen in any way, shape, or form, because it happens a lot. It happens so much, and it's not a bad thing. Don't even get me wrong. I'm not classifying it as a bad thing. I'm classifying it as something that happens a lot due to parental choices and due to actions because of fear of something. Instead of approaching a situation where it's like, you have a parataxic distortion, let's start taking steps to break down this distortion of this individual, right? For example, oh, Ophelia is the queen of all vampires, but why doesn't she run hell? Oh, that's right, because that's Caius's domain. Because Caius has control over hell, you know? And so you start, like, slowly breaking down that you can allow them to hang out to the point where you start seeing the flaws that start appearing in those natures. as opposed to just rough separation and then boom, pedestal work up in there. Sorry guys, don't mean to use you as examples. You just immediately came to my mind. If someone thinks they can fix a person, do they have to focus all their efforts into it? Or can it be done on the side? JP, you want me to be straight up? You should never try to fix a person. No, love it. As an individual, it is not your job to fix a person. Your job is to work on yourself. It is a therapist's job or a trained professional to help a person start fixing themselves. A therapist cannot fix a person. A person can fix themselves, though. A therapist, we can lead you with questions to start the introspective process for you to start fixing yourself. Whatever that may mean for you. But we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink, is the example that's there. And if you expand all your energy onto an individual like that, it can mean a lot. I mean, what if there are no therapists because you got isekai? No, Masha Tenkin, that's what I'm getting at, is this is totally normal. This would be a totally normal response if they come together like magnets and yeah, not that they're banging, or even if they are, like, that they're like back together like that, because there is no mental health. I'm pretty sure Victor can attest to this. There is no therapist in Mushoku Tensei. There is no therapist in almost any isekai, I mean, from your experience, people who try to fix others, do they focus other? So oftentimes, it's because of an anxious attachment. Oh, there is Geese. Hold on. There is Geese. By the way, Victor, if you're still in here, why didn't you tell me that Geese was straight up like a therapist, bro? A full-on psychologist. He was using different therapeutic interventions with Paul, dude. Yeah, Geese was something else, but that's a separate entity. That's a separate identity, bro. But just in general, when people try and fix others, oftentimes it's like a plane that's falling. Instead of putting on the mask for themselves, they're trying to put on a mask of someone that's like, doesn't want the fucking mask. They'll put on the mask and they realize that you're putting on that mask as well. So that's the regard I always say. It's work on yourself. Like, if need be, recommend them to a trained professional. But in a non-world like this where there are no professionals, the best thing that I can go ahead and say is, hey, you can be there for a person. And I think for someone that goes through sexual trauma, the best thing that you can tell them is, I will be here for you no matter what. And watch the problem be resolved. I won't leave you. Watch those magical words start the healing process for a person. Sorry guys, I didn't mean to go so fucking deep on something like that. I swear I didn't mean to go that deep. I swear it was only meant to be little bits and pieces, little bits and pieces here. Okay, let me get some water. Oh man, what are you guys? No, dig deep. Okay. The other villagers. Okay, here we go. Chased around by children wielding sticks. The very thought of her suffering made my blood boil time and time again. Regardless of how much my daughter, the adult villager, that was done to my daughter, the adult villagers continued to accommodate us. Despite my anger, I couldn't simply punish the wayward children. I asked them why they tormented Sylphiette so much. It shocked me when they informed me that targeting demons was just for fun. Their theory was, if they threw mud or chased people with the stick, all the victim had to do was run away or at least pretend to succumb, as had done Roxy. It was too early for my daughter to understand these games, and they only frightened her. When I asked them to stop, they didn't care at all or listen to my plea. Can you imagine, Victor's note, can you imagine how much prejudice Roxy had to deal with before she became a well-known adventurer? Yeah, I honestly can't even imagine how much hatred and feelings of remorse and feelings of everything Roxy must have gone through to be where she is today. If you want me to be realistic with you, Roxy is probably one of the most resilient characters that we've seen in terms of everything that she's gone through. But at the same time, this is another fear that I have, is Roxy's innocence and the way that she keeps tracking by. Like, let's say that she were to meet with some other person that is decent at talking, a manipulator or something like this, could force her to do actions that might not necessarily be the best. especially in a world with creepy nobles. That's where my mind races to, considering how much of an impact she's having in this world. Sorry, guys. Anyway, my mind's just. And this is what happens in every session, dude. A good therapist is always like. Roxy has been silent through prejudice and likely vocal prejudice, yet still keeps going. I know. Absolute goddess. Following my ignored request for civility, we tried several countermeasures. My wife, my wolf. That's a little bit of the tequila talking. My wife cut our daughter's hair short. It made pants for her so that she could run away more easily. I went to the doors of the other children's parents and asked if they could talk sense and kindness into their offspring. For Sylphia's 5th birthday, I traveled down the road of Roa, and with the little money I had, I bought her a jacket with the hood to cover her hair, but it didn't solve anything. The adults knew she was being bullied and tried to help. However, when the bullying happened beyond their view, my 5-year-old daughter gradually became more and more afraid of going outside. As her energy and smile faded, I wondered if it would be better to move to another area with her hair. With their hair, though, it would have been the same wherever we went. At least the adults understood and sympathized, which was better than nothing. When the children got older, they might learn right from wrong, but my wife and I were worried that the weight might be too much for our daughter to endure. Then one day, our daughter's cheerfulness mysteriously returned. She had met Rudius. Oh, Rudy. Oh, Rudy. Oh, Rudy, my corazón. Pobrecito. Pobrecito el señor Rudy. Cada vez que viene el pinche Rudy, todos la cagan. Honestamente. Encuentra una disque noviecita, la cagan. Tú sabes, lo mandan para otra ciudad. Encuentran una manera en que va a estar contento el güey, la cagan. I'm just saying, every single time that Rudy has meet someone, a friend, some genuine form of happiness, it's like people will always fucking ruin it. Like they're like, oh, he meets Sylphie. All right, time to separate you guys. We're getting a little too close. He's like starting to fall in love with Eris, starting to like just make motions with Eris. Displacement incident. You thought, now you got to take care of her. Guilt and emotions. You know, Roxy is starting to go ahead and develop these feelings for her. Oh, she's got to leave. You learned everything you can learn from her. It's like time and time again. It's like poor Rudy, dude. I hit the remote and the language changes on the television. Ay, Calles, pobrecito. Pobrecito, señor Calles. Ay, ay, ay. It's just like the time I had SpongeBob stuck in Spanish for a month. Fair. Sometimes my TV is in Spanish. I'm like, wait a minute. I do want to talk about this a little bit. And this is going to be a genuine question for people out there. You guys in chat or you guys out there in general. Have you guys faced any form of discrimination? Because if to empathize with Roxy, you know, we can all be like, oh, that's something. But to empathize in a further sense, my question for you guys is, have you guys faced any form of discrimination? And if so, how did you guys deal with it? I'll open up. I faced discrimination in many times in my life. There was some times where I've been acting, doing some like theater stuff, some voice acting stuff, and I had to go into a neighborhood where the very, very well endowed neighborhood, where a lot of the individuals there, you know, don't necessarily look like me, right? Needless to say, going in for the job where I had to go record stuff, I was stopped and searched, not because I did anything wrong or because I ran a stop sign, just because I looked suspicious, even though I was going to that area of work, and held outside and put like cuffs on me outside, waiting for them to check everything, my car, and then being like, calling the person I'm working for, and them saying like, oh yeah, it's his job, he's supposed to come in. In other areas, people just looking, thinking that I don't understand Spanish or Dutch or some other language, and hearing stuff come out and then just being like, wait a minute, that's a little, I understand a little bit about what you're saying, you know. It's a little bit about that resilience as well. Rejections, yes. Discrimination, I guess a little bit, but not much. I haven't noticed discrimination in my life, but not the level of Sylphie. But not to the level of Sylphie's is facing, where all of a sudden people are looking at you and interacting with you like if you're trash. Like if you're bad, like you're a demon, you know, it's La Llorona, it's El Chupacabra, and you got to beat up the Chupacabra wherever he is. Nothing like that. But in a situation like this, it hurts. Like for me internally, hearing the amount of like discrimination that is happening for Sylphie, it hurts. Rejection discrimination, oh dude, oof. Even that one hurts. Oh, Caius, what about yourself? I'm kind of curious because discrimination and any form of like even racial bias and stuff like that goes both ways. It goes everywhere. It goes in every single kind of way. Have you ever felt it for yourself or for anyone else out there? Because I think that's a big thing. I had okay. I'll be straight up about it, and I know I've shared this once, but it's happened a couple of times. It's not even so much a discrimination factor, but it's been sometimes where a random chatter comes in here and it's like, how can you be a therapist when you're so fat? We've encountered that on stream, haven't we? Another one, quite literally, some comments that have been deleted because some people were like, you know, for example, oh yeah, I'm gonna be straight up about it. It's gonna sound rough, right? But quite literally being like, why can't you be like this other individual, reactor, whatever? Yeah, we would take you seriously if you weren't brown or black. I've been told that straight up. Comments, random stuff like that. The mods and everyone have seen everything from A through Z. Yeah, yeah. And actually kind of funny because Brady and I went to the same school together. We're best friends and everything. But someone came in and or one time and actually said that, not knowing the fact that Brady and I went to the same school, same everything together, and the fact that like I started like in terms of psychological reactions in anime and stuff like this, way beforehand brought Brady in and everything. But for them, it's like easy to throw out certain gems like that, and it's interesting, right? Because for me, it's like wondering, it's like what is the bait that is coming through a situation like that? But aside from all of that, the main point that I'm trying to get at is this: discrimination comes in many shapes, forms, and sizes, right? He uses himself as yeah, exactly. But my thing is, physical health has nothing to do with like in terms of the way that a therapist or you're able to perform your job as a therapist. But when it comes to this in particular, discrimination is rough. Discrimination and forms of just hatred can really be traumatic for people, especially if they don't know how to cope. And a child, double it or triple it. And that is exactly why my fear for Rudy not being in this world multiplies the more that I'm understanding this story. Anyway, she had met Rudius. He saved her and protected her. In turn, Sylphiette was completely comfortable with them, and lately all she ever talks about the dinner table is her new friend. Every conversation with our daughter is full of updates about her new friendships, a constant litany of today we end, tomorrow Rudy is going to... I saw her smile for the first time in a long time, and our dinner table seems brighter than it has for a long while, but I'm worried about the next problem she might face. Sigh. What's wrong, Rawls? Why are you sighing? It was late at night, in the middle of my rotation on patrol. Paul called to me. Ah, Paul. Paul was Rudius's father. He lived in the village as its resident at night and was responsible for keeping the peace in the village. He placed a hand on my shoulder. If you have a problem, I'll be glad to listen. No, it's really not a problem, I insisted. Well, why don't you tell me about it anyway? We got some free time after all. Victor's note. Paul, the good leader showing his face, despite his womanizing. True, Paul was a great leader of the Fangs of the Black Wolf and the Fateau Rescue Squad. That's what makes this story great. The characters are all complex and multifaceted. So far, absolutely true. Paul wasn't your average swordsman. He had obtained advanced ranking in 3 major schools of swordsmanship. Indeed, an incredible feat. The only reason I haven't written about it is because I'm saving it for my YouTube channel. Guys, go check out Victor whenever his YouTube channel comes out. You guys will probably see it because we're going to go ahead and advertise it as well. He could doubtlessly defeat any monster around with a single blow. With his strength, he could probably have been a successful knight in the capital. I wondered why he came to such a backwater town. Yup, that was already curated, but was deeply grateful that he was there, especially because of his son's friendship with my daughter. In reality, this friendship could cause some new concerns for me. I decided that Paul might be able to help me devise a plan to resolve the issue and explain to him my cause of unease. Last night, my wife said to our daughter, "Tomorrow your father's going to the watchtower, so come home around noon and help out with preparations." Paul nodded, impressed. "Oh, already helping out. That's wonderful." Though Rudius and Sylphie were both 7 years old, Paul and Rudius undergone special training at the age of 3. Paul asked, "So what's the problem with that?" I paused. My daughter came home late in the evening. Lately, she hadn't been keeping her word, and I could easily guess the reason. Paul rubbed his chin pensively. "Ah, well, that's common. Kids become so engrossed in playing that they lose track of time. Once or twice would be fine, but these days it's all the time. Sylphie is normally a hopeful girl who listens to us, but that's not the case when Rudius is involved. Why don't you scold her sternly and warn her to be more careful next time?" Paul asked. I sighed. "Even if I do, she just makes the same excuse. But Rudy and hardly listened to me." When I said that, Paul's face darkened. I hastily added, "Oh no, I'm not saying this is Rudius' fault or anything. He takes good care of her." Oh, dude, I can see his father just freaking out. Once my daughter turned 5 and started going for walks around her own, she became the target of the village children. I was extremely grateful for Rudius' intervention, and I understood that the two had gotten quite close. Zictor's not the poor lowly hunter is afraid of displeasing the knight. Yeah, it's a social and power dynamics. Absolutely, my friend. But Sylphie was definitely making a lot more excuses lately than she had been taking over Rudius' word over ours. My wife and I realized that it was most likely the case that we weren't able to help her when she needed it most. I continued. "It's just at her age, we're concerned that she's not listening to what we say." Paul had a difficult expression on his face. He seemed to be thinking about something. "Well, I'm sure it's something that may change in a few years." I explained that I wondered if my daughter's brain had any room for any thought besides those of Rudius. It had come to the point where she'd forgot what we'd told her and make her singular excuse. "But Rudy," whenever she asked why she didn't keep her word, I hoped that as she grew older and learned to make wise decisions, she would begin to listen to us again. Rudy is good, but so in case you guys are wondering, I got sick lately, right? And I'll be straight up. I don't think I've shared this with the people there. They might know by now. There might be a video explaining a little bit about my medical condition or what I'm working to go ahead and cure. I work with underprivileged populations doing therapy and adults. Aside from my own business, aside from teaching martial arts and coaching, in fighting and all of that, which might soon, sadly, come to a pause for a bit while I'm on my meds and stuff. When it comes to this particular area, kids between the ages of 7 through 17 even, those are the prime ages to get them into what is called play therapy. All right. And why is that? Why do you, aside from Rudius implanting things on her head, which we can I'd say that he's influencing her thoughts and stuff, how do we learn our rules? Right? Because mom and dad are always there. Yes, they're going to try and watch out for you and look out for you and all of these things. During those ages, the rules of play make up a big thing. And even as adults, we are homo ludens. We are creatures that play. And there's a good book on that, on quite literally play therapy and being a homo luden. It's the psychology behind play, right? And why, when we play, for example, when we play tag, why do we know instinctively what the rules are? Or hide and go seek, or even playing make-believe at times. Games make more sense than life. Sometimes it's learning the social cues, the verbal, social, emotional implications and cues that we're picking up from others. How do our parents can be there, right? And this is one of the play circuit is one of the oldest. Yeah, it's one of the oldest in our brain. And I will always say this: as individuals, we have two choices. And as kids, this is one of the most phenomenal ways to teach them. We have the portion of the stick or the portion of the rope. How do you want to play? A stick is a more aggressive kind of play. The stick is the more aggressive kind of play that leads to things like war. A rope is trying to go ahead and unite others in a form of play in of itself. We can actually control and structure games. Caius, yes. But this is a topic in one of my uni classes, how games are so intrinsic to humans. Let's go! Hey, there you guys go. Now you guys know that, like, it's not just a random topic that's thrown out there. It's an actual deep, even within the psychology community, topic of like debate and context. And there's been thousands of research papers done on this, which is how do we learn the rules of play and why are they useful? Right? Exactly, Smoke Mantra. Dude, I love the fact that you jumped on, you're like, I'm studying that in one of my uni classes. See, children are especially susceptible, and this is why, and I hate to do this even to YouTube, right? I love you dudes. I love you. Even Twitch, for that matter. You're going through, and boom, you see your favorite YouTuber, Ophelia, or Twitch streamer, Ophelia, or Caius, or Raccoon, and you click search, and all of a sudden you get a Raid Shadow Legends, now with over 10 million views, blah, 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 big commercial. Cool. Raid Shadow Legends, little logo on the side, just floating. Raid Shadow Legends in the comments down below with another. It takes 7 times, even within the rules of play, for stuff to stick, right? Within the stuff of advertisement for shit to stick. And did you get paid? Not yet. Not yet. Although they have reached out. I haven't decided. They have reached out. It's tempting. It's tempting. But I'm not going to go further into that until I officially accept anything. But with that, subliminal messaging is the rules of play. I did want to go ahead and bring up social cues. Social cues is how we learn the rules of play. Boundaries is what we learn with the rules of play. When you're playing, what happens when you take things a little too far? If I'm playing with... Do you play Raid Shadow Legends? If I'm playing, say, with Zictor or with Caius, and, like, I overstep a boundary. Let's say that, like, we're playing tag and I accidentally push them over. What's going to happen? Immediate clap back from the community or the little group that I'm playing with. Why'd you do that? You're not supposed to do that. Blah, 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 blah. Complexes of shame, of everything is starting to set up what those factors are. For me, this is a beautiful component to go ahead and talk about it because it also expresses... Nah, I play Apex. Is there anything you could analyze in Raid? I could probably analyze a lot in Raid. Like character structures. Why did we develop certain characters? Why is an orc good or bad? Or I don't know, bro. We got to have a D&D session about it. You learn that you can't always win in order to keep playing with other people. Absolutely. So whenever I see aspects like this, with Sylphia's father getting worried about that, the change might have happened like soon. The shift might have happened too soon. But it might have been long overdue for poor Sylphia. This might have been one of her callings. This might have been something that she genuinely had been looking forward to, that she genuinely needed in her life. My vocabulary is screwed because I had more experience reading fantasy novels and talking to kids my age. I mean, yeah, it happens. It happens, bro. It happens. Anyway, I think that this is awesome. Paul nodded. That would be good, huh? Then he made a rather frightening expression. The look on his face was murderous. Deep in thought, he muttered, "This isn't going to work the way it is now." He suddenly fell silent, apparently lost in his contemplation. Oh, yes, because Daddy. Of his behavior. I found myself at a loss for words and felt pressure into silence. With that, the two of us finished our watch in silence. The atmosphere surrounding us feeling heavier than usual. I wouldn't learn about Paul's thoughts matter until later. I mean... This is I think this is again is Paul just jumping into solving the issue rather than like communicating, right? And this is why with Paul and we had just read yesterday Paul and his conversation with Geese, and how he actually was like, this time I'm okay with paying the tab, because he actually had the opportunity to listen and honestly be confronted. For me, this is big. Has been to act on his first thought. Oh, did you? Yeah, we read that yesterday. And like that moment was big in of itself. And this moment in of itself is big because it's again Paul solving the issue, right? Will it go up on YouTube? It will go up on YouTube. Heck yeah, dude. That was an amazing arc. That was an amazing chapter, and I wish that they included that, or they made like just a special episode just for that like little monologue, dude, because that was It was beautiful. It was honestly like I think I cried. I literally think I cried in that episode, dude. Like, or in that chapter. I think did I cry? I think I got all emotional and shit about it because of the way Geese was like moving through shit, and yeah, it was awesome. That's a good question. That's a good question, Victor. But through this, my number one concern, my big issue, or my big thing with this, is it's awesome that Sylphia's father has always been looking out for her. It's fantastic to see that there is a lot of care that's being put into that. And his worries, don't think he cried, but I have, dude, I thought it was fucking awesome. I thought it was awesome. His worries are justified, right? As a parent, you should always be worried about your kids, how they're learning, how they're playing, and all of these things. There's nothing that you can do about how the other parent's going to respond, but even like communicating and being open, what we're seeing is Sylphia's dad actually kind of being more mature individual in the way that he communicates. That's why I find that cool. I find this chapter to be a really nice backstory for the parents. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Have I made any predictions about Sophie? A couple. I think I made a couple on some of the previous readings, like particularly to do with Sophie. If we're putting everything in a contextual point of view, let's put this like hold on, let me check. I think I just making sure we're good. Oh crap. Okay, hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on, boys and girls. Hold on. All right. Whenever they want, they can jump in. For me, this is one of those few moments where I'm like, it's awesome, it's wonderful. Like, sorry, my train of thought. But yes, for Sophie, I made a couple predictions. It's in the previous chapters. I'm trying to remember them. But just off of the interactions, it's like everyone has a role to play, and it's so masterfully done. I finished the dinner chapter. What do you think of curating some Roxy chapters? Dude, I'm more than down to like read those Roxy chapters as well. The more you guys throw at me, the more I'm probably gonna read. By the end of this, I'm just gonna read the whole novel. I'm gonna know a lot more of different chapters throughout the novels. That's awesome. Oh, guys, I appreciate y'all. Overall, though, I do gotta say, for me, the backstory in this is awesome because it does give a little bit more insight into the way that they acted and they reacted. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a solid 8 out of 10 Doritos, and I'll tell you why. Parenting. Parenting. The parenting in this chapter is actual parenting. No, I want to read the whole thing. I want to read the whole thing. That's at some point in time I want to read the whole thing. But at the rate that we're going, it's like one chapter equals, or one little chapter equals an hour 20. Anime parenting red flags. Remember to go back and read Lilio's backstory. I will, definitely will. That's why for me, it's like reading all of this. It's a good way of going ahead and have my brain moving. And like, I hate to put it this way because I feel like I might get some flack later on. If your therapist is young, your psychologist is young, and they're not into video games or anime, push them a little bit, because this is how you're able to understand your people a little bit more. You know, you're able to understand characters and situations more. Even for like the kids that come into therapy with me, whenever they start talking about specific anime characters, I can bring up what they're talking about without having to use big words or try and get them to metaphysically and methodically explain something. It's like, okay, so that's what we're looking at, you know, being open to all of that. With that, I do want to go ahead and say, dude, I think this is awesome. I think that this was an awesome little backstory, and I'm so excited for what's to come.